Day follows night, night follows day. This world keeps rolling along. What will your answer be? What will you say when Jesus beckons you home? His name was Jimmy. He wasn't very old, about 10, 11 years since birth. But you wouldn't call life for Jimmy heaven upon this earth. Now Jimmy and his parents lived in the northern part of the nation. Jimmy had to sell newspapers just to stay off of starvation. Because you see, Jimmy and his parents, they loved the nightlife. Jimmy was just too much fun. And I wonder if they'll still feel the same way when they stand before their Heavenly Father. Now, one day as little Jimmy was passing out his newspapers, he walked by a little old gospel mission. He heard the preacher say, "Come in, Jesus will give you a new life and a better way." And Jimmy's feet was cold. He said, "I'll go in where it might be safer. And if I see Jesus, I'll give him a paper." And when the last altar call was given, little Jimmy ran down the aisle and he laid his paper bag down at the altar. And he lifted his face toward heaven. He said, "Jesus, this is Jimmy. Jesus, this is Jimmy." That's the only way the little fellow knew how to pray. And from that day on, as Jimmy would go by the old gospel mission, he'd go in and say, "Jesus, this is Jimmy." There was a very cold day, and Jimmy's feet was cold, his eyes were watering. The preacher was having a counseling session and not knowing that he was bothering anybody. And little Jimmy ran down the aisle and he said, "Jesus, this is Jimmy. Jesus, this is Jimmy." The preacher grabbed him by the arm and he said, "Boy, can't you see that we're busy? Why do you keep interrupting us with that simple and unusual prayer, Jesus, this is Jimmy?" Jimmy said, "Well, preacher, it's the only way I know how to pray. And I just want Jesus to know my name." The preacher said, "Well, that's not a good reason. You'll have to stop it just a second." Jimmy left the little gospel mission with tears in his eyes. He said, "I could make it," not knowing it was his last ride. And it being a cold day, Jimmy slipped from the curb. The big truck hit him on the run. The preacher caught a glimpse of the scene and feeling bad about what he'd done, he ran out and he grabbed Jimmy up in his arms, and to the nearest hospital they fled. The preacher standing by and the doctor there too. The preacher cried out with panic in his voice. He said, "Oh my God, if Jimmy could only well again, how it would please us." Jimmy spoke from his bedside and said, "Jesus, this is Jimmy. Jesus, this is Jimmy." The doctor felt his pulse and said his life on earth will soon be through. Then the room lit up with a strange and beautiful light as if somebody was about to speak, but nobody was in sight. Then the voice spoke in a kind and gentle way and said, "Jimmy, this is Jesus. Jesus, Jimmy, this is Jesus. Suffer little children, bid them not to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven." Day follows night, night follows day. The world keeps rolling along. What will your answer be? What will you say Hey, 'cause